40 years ago, a single movie changed the way an entire generation understood courage. Not the loud, explosive kind, but the quiet, get-back-up-again kind that nobody films. The Karate Kid opened in June of 1984 and became something far larger than anyone in that cast could have predicted. It wasn't just a film about a kid learning karate. It was about loneliness, about finding a father figure in a stranger, about proving yourself in a world that has already decided what you are. The people who brought that story to life went on to live stories of their own, some triumphant, some heartbreaking, and some that ended far too soon. This is where they are now, and this is what they endured to get there. Ralph Macchio was 22 years old when he stepped onto that mat for the very first time as Daniel LaRusso, an awkward, transplanted kid from New Jersey thrown into the sun-drenched hostility of suburban California. Born on November 4, 1961 in Huntington, New York, Macchio had already made his mark on television in the early 80s, but nothing prepared the world or him for what the Karate Kid would become. The role didn't just make him famous. It fused his identity to a fictional teenager in a way that would take decades to unravel. Throughout the late 80s and into the 90s, he found himself trapped in a typecasting spiral that the industry rarely shows mercy toward. Roles dried up. Unemployment stretched across long, difficult seasons. He married Phyllis Fierro in 1987, and their union became the steadiest thing in an otherwise uncertain chapter of his life, even as financial pressures and the grief of losing his brother cast long shadows over their home. The frustration of being reduced to a single character, no matter how beloved, pushed him close to walking away from acting entirely. Then came a quiet comeback. His performance in My Cousin Vinny in 1992 reminded people that there was more to Ralph Macchio than the crane kick. The emotional turbulence of those middle years shaped the artist, who eventually returned to Cobra Kai, the YouTube Premium and later Netflix series that gave him not just a second act, but a third. In 2024, he received his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, a moment that felt less like industry recognition and more like a full-circle reckoning with everything he had survived. Today, at 64 years old, with an estimated net worth of $8 million, Ralph Macchio continues to act, to write, and to carry the humility that made Daniel LaRusso feel real in the first place. The soul of the Karate Kid was never Ralph Macchio's alone. It belonged, perhaps more than anyone else, to the man who played Mr. Miyagi. Pat Morita was born on June 28, 1932, in Alton, California, and his life before Hollywood was already a testament to survival. He spent years as a child in a hospital bed battling spinal tuberculosis. He was interned at a Japanese-American internment camp during World War II alongside his family. By the time he reached the set of The Karate Kid at 52 years old, Morita had been carrying the weight of an entire life's worth of adversity with a grace that seemed almost impossible. His performance as Mr. Miyagi earned him an Academy Award nomination, a recognition that came as a shock to an industry that had spent decades casting him in comedic, supporting roles that deliberately kept his full range off the table. The frustration of that limitation never left him entirely. His first marriage to Kathleen Yamachi collapsed under the pressure of his alcoholism, a battle he waged privately while projecting the composed exterior his public image required. His second marriage also bore the marks of those struggles. By the time he found stability with his third wife, Evelyn Guerrero, his health had already begun to deteriorate. Years of heavy drinking had quietly destroyed his kidneys, and recurring infections made every day an exhausting negotiation with his own body. He kept working through the illness, voicing characters in Milan, appearing in smaller projects, because slowing down felt to him like surrender. Sadly, Pat Morita passed away on November 24, 2005, at his home in Las Vegas. He was 73 years old. The cause of death was kidney failure. He was cremated at Palm Green Valley, and the net worth he left behind, estimated at approximately $5 million, reflected a career built on brilliance that Hollywood never fully acknowledged during his lifetime. His legacy, however, has only grown. Martin Kove was 38 years old when he delivered the line that would define him for the rest of his life. Born on March 6, 1946, in Brooklyn, New York, Kove brought a controlled ferocity to John Kreese, the Cobra Kai sensei, whose no mercy philosophy became one of the most quoted commands in 80s cinema. He stepped into cinematic history with a single role, and the world loved to hate him for it. But the man behind that menacing composure lived a far more complicated private story. His 20-year marriage to Vivian Kove slowly came apart under financial strain and the growing pressures of raising their twins, especially as his career stalled following The Karate Kid Part 3. When the marriage finally ended, the emotional aftermath reshaped how he navigated both his professional and personal life for years to come. During the filming of Rambo, First Blood Part 2, the physical demands of the set led to Kove breaking his nose multiple times, resulting in chronic breathing difficulties and a series of costly surgeries. With roles becoming scarce through the 90s, he turned to teaching martial arts simply to maintain financial stability. The Cobra Kai revival changed everything. Reprising his role as Kreese across 6 seasons returned him to the spotlight in a way that felt almost redemptive. Today, at 79 years old, Martin Kove lives on an 11-acre ranch in Tennessee, dividing his time between karate training, meditation, horseback riding, and maintaining his cigar brand, The Prodigal Son. His estimated net worth sits at around $2 million, a figure rebuilt largely on the back of a character the world never forgot. William Zabka was only 18 years old when he became one of the most recognizable teenage villains in movie history. Born on October 20th, 1965 in New York City, Zabka brought a surprising complexity to Johnny Lawrence, the Cobra Kai champion who, on the surface, seemed to be nothing more than a bully, but who carried within him a story of his own neglect and misdirection. The role made him famous. It also nearly broke him. The typecasting that followed was relentless, and an early marriage fell apart quietly under financial pressure when Zabka stepped away from acting in 1990 to study directing, determined to build a career that existed beyond the villain label. Independent films he invested in collapsed financially. Doubt gathered around him like weather. The relationship he later built with Stacey Lynn Doss was tested repeatedly by the instability of those years, but they chose to hold their family together, raising 2 children while he fought to reclaim his artistic voice. The turning point came when Zabka co-produced Cobra Kai and reclaimed Johnny Lawrence not as a cartoon antagonist, but as a broken, searching human being. The performance earned him an Emmy nomination. At 60 years old in 2025, William Zabka continues to act, produce, and direct, his estimated net worth reaching $4 million, a testament to the patience it took to wait for the world to see him differently. Randy Heller was 37 years old when she played Lucille LaRusso, Daniel's warm and tenaciously optimistic single mother, and she brought to that role a depth that the film's central storyline rarely paused to acknowledge. Born on June 10, 1947, in Brooklyn, New York, Heller had built a career on stage and in soap operas before The Karate Kid, but the losses she had absorbed along the way were real and lasting. The death of both parents left her wrestling with depression and forced her to interrupt her stage career and take part-time work simply to keep herself financially afloat. Hollywood received her with a limited vision, casting her repeatedly as comedic, supporting characters and shutting her out of the leading roles her talent warranted. A series of Broadway disappointments left her emotionally drained and seriously questioning whether she belonged in the industry at all. She married Jeffrey West in 1998, but the demands of her career and the uncertainties that surrounded it created enough distance that they temporarily separated in 2005. They eventually reconciled, though the strain had taken a measurable toll on her mental health and heightened her anxiety as the years passed. She kept working through it all, taking roles in Bulworth, earning an Emmy nomination for her work on Mad Men, and never stopped. Today, at 78 years old, Randee Heller remains active in television, her estimated net worth sitting at $1.5 million, accumulated through decades of acting and voice work. Elizabeth Shue was 20 years old when she played Ally Mills, Daniel LaRusso's bright and confident first love, bringing an effortless warmth to a character that could easily have been decorative. Born on October 6, 1963, in Wilmington, Delaware, Shue was just beginning a career that would eventually reach the highest levels of Hollywood recognition. But behind her rising profile was a grief she carried quietly. The sudden death of her brother William in 1988 shattered her emotionally and sent her into a prolonged period of mourning that forced her to step back from the spotlight, question her place in an industry she had only just begun to navigate, and face long stretches of profound sadness while still trying to remain present for the people who needed her. Marriage to director Davis Guggenheim in 1994 brought stability, though even that steadiness was briefly tested by the pressures that Hollywood gossip generates. Shue responded by channeling her grief and insecurity into her work, most profoundly in Leaving Las Vegas in 1995, a performance so raw and fully inhabited that it earned her an Academy Award nomination. In 2025, at 62 years old, Elizabeth Shue continues to work across film and television, including her acclaimed role in The Boys. Her estimated net worth of $20 million reflects not just talent, but the specific kind of resilience that only comes from having truly fallen apart and rebuilt. William Bassett was 48 years old when he played Mr. Mills in The Karate Kid, a brief but commanding presence that added texture and tension to Daniel's new world. Born on December 28, 1935 in Evanston, Illinois, Bassett spent the bulk of his career navigating the difficult territory of the character actor, perpetually typecast as stern authority figures, consistently limited in income, and perpetually overlooked for the recognition his consistency deserved. When his wife, Patricia and Dorsey, began experiencing serious health problems, Bassett divided his days between film sets and caregiving at home, carrying financial and emotional burdens that most of his audience never saw. Their marriage lasted through decades of illness, medical bills, and exhaustion before Patricia passed away in 2010 after 48 years together. The grief that followed was deep and lasting, and Bassett continued working, lending his voice to Metal Gear Solid, appearing in projects like The Towering Inferno, with a quiet weight that seemed to come from somewhere beyond performance. He passed away on February 9th, 2025, in Woodland Hills, Los Angeles, at the age of 89 from natural causes. He left behind a career spanning more than 100 film and television appearances and a net worth estimated at $1.2 million, the sum of a long life of professional dedication and quiet sacrifice. Chad McQueen was 23 years old when he played Dutch, the volatile, sharp-edged Cobra Kai fighter whose intensity felt almost genetic, as though the ferocity came naturally to someone raised in the orbit of Steve McQueen. Born on December 28, 1960, in Los Angeles, California, McQueen inherited both the privilege and the impossible expectation that comes with his father's name. His life away from the screen was marked by emotional turbulence, a marriage to a partner, before Stacey Toden collapsed under the weight of addiction and instability. Subsequent relationships were strained by custody disputes and the long shadow of his past. When his acting career showed some promise in films like Death Ring and Redline, The turmoil at home was quickly matched by physical catastrophe. In 2006, a crash at Daytona shattered his vertebrae, his leg, and his ribs, leaving him partially paralyzed and in chronic pain that never fully resolved. He continued working in motorsport media and later formed McQueen Racing, but the physical damage done by that accident was irreversible, slowly weakening his organs over the years that followed. Sadly, Chad McQueen died on September 11th, 2024, at his ranch in Palm Desert, California. He was 63 years old. The cause was multi-organ failure linked to years of unresolved injuries. His net worth at the time of his death was estimated at $45 million, built across decades of acting, racing, and production work. He was the son of a legend, and he carried that inheritance with the complicated dignity of someone who never stopped trying to find his own lane. Pat E. Johnson was 44 years old when he appeared in The Karate Kid as the All-Valley Tournament referee, a role that felt perfectly cast, given that he was also the film's chief fight choreographer. Born on December 31st, 1939, in Niagara Falls, New York, Johnson brought a precision and authority to the film that grounded its central competition in something that felt genuinely athletic. Behind that expertise, however, his personal life was shaped by the same strain that physical dedication so often produces. The demands of martial arts training, long hours, and constant travel created distance in his marriage to Sue Birkeland Felix. Injuries sustained during his work on Enter the Dragon generated relentless pain that disrupted his teaching career and created financial instability that stretched their relationship close to breaking. Creative disagreements with Chuck Norris cost him professional partnerships he had once relied on, and the combination of marital tension, career setbacks, and the long physical toll of his stunt work eventually manifested in serious heart complications. Pat Johnson passed away on November 5, 2023, in Los Angeles at the age of 83. He spent his final years quietly with his family, far from the demanding world that had shaped his life. His net worth at the time of his passing was estimated at around $800,000, earned through decades of choreography, teaching, and film work. Rob Garrison was 24 years old when he delivered the line that audiences still quote 40 years later, playing Tommy, the impulsive Cobra Kai member, whose brief screen time left a disproportionate mark on the film's identity. Born on January 23, 1960, in Wheeling, West Virginia, Garrison carried that small flame of recognition through a career that the industry never allowed to expand the way he had hoped. He lived alone, absorbed his struggles privately, and found that the typecasting that followed his early work pushed him into financial hardship that required him to take non-acting jobs while writing scripts at night in hopes of a restart that kept not arriving. The chronic disappointment fed a depression that grew heavier with time, and the physical toll of that weight eventually manifested in respiratory and kidney complications. He appeared in Cobra Kai in what would be one of his final performances, a moment of gentle closure for a character the world had never stopped caring about. Rob Garrison passed away on September 27, 2019, at the age of 59, after a month of hospitalization due to kidney and liver failure. His estimated net worth at the time was around $1 million, built slowly through small roles, stage work, and that last return to the screen. Bruce Malmuth directed Nighthawks in 1981 before appearing in The Karate Kid as the energetic ring announcer who elevated the intensity of the All-Valley Tournament's final showdown. Born on February 4, 1934 in Brooklyn, New York, Malmuth had built a career across both sides of the camera, as an actor, a director, and a creative voice whose ambitions repeatedly outpaced the industry's willingness to receive them. When Nighthawks was met with harsh critical reception, the emotional fallout, combined with unresolved trauma from his military years, pushed him toward a period of depression and brief alcohol dependency. His first marriage fell apart in 1970 after remarrying and raising 2 children with Barbara Malmuth. The pressure of trying to rebuild a directing career kept tension alive in the household. Hard to Kill, released in 1990, restored some commercial credibility, but the exhaustion of years of instability never truly lifted. Behind-the-scenes conflicts, including one that led to his dismissal from Stone Cold, added to a stress load that his body was running out of capacity to carry. In 2004, he was diagnosed with esophageal cancer, a disease his depleted system could not withstand. Bruce Malmuth died on June 29, 2005, at the age of 71, leaving behind a complicated legacy built on resilience, disappointment, and a talent the industry never fully honored. The story of the Karate Kid's cast is ultimately the story of what happens after the credits roll, after the applause fades, and the real work of living begins. Some of them found second acts that matched or exceeded the original moment of glory. Others spent decades in the quiet struggle of staying relevant, staying solvent, and staying intact. A few paid with their health, their peace, and eventually their lives. What unites them is not the film itself, though that film remains one of the most enduring products of American popular culture, but the fact that they were all, in one way or another, more than the characters they played. They were people navigating an industry that takes a great deal and rarely gives back equally, in a world that moves on while they carry the weight of a single defining moment. The Karate Kid was made 40 years ago. The people who made it possible deserve to be